I believe that rapport and building rapport and that relationship with the learner is the most important thing we do, because if you don't have that, everything else can fall apart. What do you think?
That helps you build trust between you. You've got to trust one another.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. With that. I think it's creating those like psychologically safe environments for your learner where you start to build rapport and that trust. And if you don't have those basic foundations there, it's really difficult to grow that relationship and nurture that relationship.
No matter how smart we all are, there can sometimes be a question in our minds, and I'm guilty of it myself sometimes, of like, am I good enough for this? Therefore, they don't do it because they think, oh, I might look silly or I might not be good enough for this. And there's a kind of a human reluctance. And I think you've got to help them get over that.
Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Learning Collab, where we at Panda Education and Training collaborate with industry experts and experienced practitioners to bring you hints, tips, and advice from the world of post-16 education. This week, we're diving into strategies for engaging and perhaps re-engaging learners in work-based learning programs, exploring practical approaches that work across apprenticeships, employability programs, and adult learning. And we've got two really good guests today. We're very pleased to welcome our two guests. We have Nick Barton, Leadership and Management Trainer Assessor, who has over how many years experience, Nick? Just a few?
Quite a few.
Excellent start. Okay, so we've got, quite a few years. And I'll ask you to give us a little bit of background on you in a second, Nick. We've also got Nikita Tucker, Learning and Development Lead at Cwmtaf University Health Board. Hi, Nikita. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you. Pleasure to be you.
Excellent. And we're gonna have a good old chat today about learner relationships and any tips for engaging learners, as we say. But we've also got our very own Anne Reardon-James. Hi, Anne.
Hello.
From Panda, and myself, Ros Prothero. And we're going to have a good old discussion about how we can re-engage learners that have perhaps lost motivation. So let's start with you, Nick. Can you give us a little bit of a background on your experience, please?
Certainly, yes. As you already mentioned, I'm a tutor and assessor in leadership management qualifications, so mainly ILM at various different levels. I work as a freelance. I work for quite a few different colleges and companies. And the relevance to this is I've been engaged specifically by certain training providers to go and deal with disengaged learners. People who, for example, done an ILM level 5, but have only put in 3 assignments in 3 years. So that kind of thing. So I've been tasked to go and connect and find out what motivates them, to get them back on track, basically. So I've been there, done it, got the T-shirt for this, if that's okay for me to say that.
It is. I just wish you'd worn the T-shirt for today. We are recording.
No, I won't.
And, you've done a lot of work with us over the years, Nick, and it's been great to work with you. So, you are very experienced in this field, which is why we asked you on. Then over to Nikita. Nikita, I believe you're in quite a new role, but just take us through that and also your experience in post-16 education.
Yeah, so when did I first come in contact with Panda Education? It was about 6-7 years ago now, Ros, I think, that I've been utilising your services, shall I say. In my current role, I am the Leadership, Learning and Development Lead for Cwmtaf University Health Board. So we're a large, complex organisation looking after learners who perhaps want to develop their management or leadership skills. I would say a previous role, it feels like a previous life now. I worked for Public Health Wales looking after accredited learning for healthcare support workers, which is where the link became apparent with Panda Education. So looking at disengaged learners really, or engaged learners from two different lenses, from an accredited learning, mandatory learning sort of lens in my previous job, whereas the learning here is not accredited, but is still vitally important for the impact in the organisation. So that's me, and I'm just so pleased to be here.
And it's really nice to have you here because, as you say, you've been working with us and coming on our courses, utilising our services for many years. It's nice to see how you've grown in that role as well, with the skills from an assessor to an IQA and now a lead IQA, which is great.
Yeah. And supporting staff as well, who are in the senior qualifications.
Yeah, definitely, which is a big part of it. And not forgetting you, Anne. So Anne, hello. If anybody wants to find out more about Anne, check out our first episode of the Learning Collab, where we find out about why Anne is so passionate about work-based learning and post-16 education. But Anne, what's your experience with engaging learners? Do you have much?
Yeah, a lot of experience
of that?
engaging disengaged learners. Absolutely. A lot of work with kind of non-traditional learners. I hate that term, but maybe people who are not necessarily from a kind of academic background.
Yeah.
Maybe, lots of kind of issues and maybe struggles or challenges with doing any kind of education and training in different settings, community, prison, probation service, work-based learning, colleges, universities, you name it. Yes, I've done it.
Yes, that's true. And from my own perspective as well, I would say over the years, you work with so many people from different backgrounds, different employers, different reasons for engaging in education. And some of those aren't because they want to. It's really hard. And we're going to talk about two things today. So engaging people right from the off when they walk through the door, but then also re-engaging people. Maybe they were engaged and something's happened or the relationship has broken down. How do you get them back in? So we're going to look at two aspects today. So today's topic about learner relationships does seem to be a hot topic and quite a challenge for people like us, practitioners in work-based learning or post-16, whether that's further ed or adult community learning. So ultimately, I believe, and I'll put this out there, but see what you think, but I believe that rapport and building rapport and that relationship with the learner is the most important thing we do, because if you don't have that, everything else can fall apart. What do you think? Controversial?
Yeah.
Do you think rapport underpins everything?
Yeah, look, it's a key factor because that helps you build trust between you. You've got to trust one another.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think it's creating those like psychologically safe environments for your learner where you start to build rapport and that trust. And if you don't have those basic foundations there, it's really difficult to grow that relationship and nurture that relationship then. So I absolutely agree.
I think the word rapport is bandied about a lot. It's like, you've got to have a good rapport with the learner. And everybody just assumes that's going to happen naturally, but it doesn't always. So we need to have a few tricks up our sleeve to make sure that we can sort of hopefully encourage that. So before we start looking at the different strategies that we all use, why do you think this happens? Why is it such a challenge for us? Why do you think that some learners do disengage? Nick, what about you?
Okay, I mean, look, it's down to experience, isn't it? And in my experience, it's been a lot of it is just life takes over. They've got busy lives, and it's about, can I prioritize an ILM level 5, which demands a lot from people. We're not going to put anyone off it. And the other thing is, no matter how smart we all are, there can sometimes be a question in our minds, and I'm guilty of it myself sometimes, of like, am I good enough for this? Therefore, they don't do it because they think, I might look silly, or I might not be good enough for this. And there's a kind of a human reluctance. And I think people you've got to help them get over that, which we'll talk about in a minute. And also sometimes people just need a clear roadmap. You can't just say, here's an assignment, off you go. They need to say, here's one someone's written, a similar one. Have a look at that. Have a look at how they laid it out and their content, just to give them an idea. I see, that's where I'm going.
I guess that comes down to individual needs as well and making sure that we're adapting for each learner. Would you say?
Definitely.
And I really like that idea you were saying as well, Nick, about it's almost like that imposter syndrome, isn't it? I've had that myself doing courses as well. You've got to catch yourself. It does happen.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, we all have it. People perhaps sometimes don't want to talk about it. I think we all have it.
Yeah.
And I've met people of all different levels, and sometimes I've just discovered that's all it was holding them back. I've written this. There's a bit of perfectionism, which isn't always a bad thing, but it can hold people back sometimes.
Maybe fear of failure then, yeah?
Yeah. Or look, fear of ridicule is one of our biggest fears, all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Going over to you, Nikita, what sort of reasons are there in your sector? Because you're very much in healthcare, health and social. I mean, what reasons do your learners disengage? Are they much different to what Nick was saying?
I think it's tricky because quite often their learning is mandated. So they've been told you have to do X, Y, and Z learning for whatever reason that is. And quite often the challenge we come up against is these learners are really clinically competent. They can do their job with their eyes closed almost, and they provide the most outstanding patient care. And then we're asking them to go away and write an assignment on health and safety, infection prevention and control. So there's almost that challenge there of, are you judging my competence to do my role, and why do I need to do this? Also, I think we rely on tried and tested methods. We don't innovate very much. We don't make learning attractive. So that's a big challenge. And to keep people engaged when they see lots of things in social media about how our learning is developing.
Yeah.
And then we ask them, write a 5,000 word assignment.
Yeah.
That's not attractive to them. But I think the biggest reason I find for disengagement is they're under so much pressure to provide excellent care, and that's ultimately what they want to do. So to take 7.5 hours out of their day to attend a learning and development program, they feel that as that 7.5 hours they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
So we almost need to rewrite our narrative around learning and development and pitch that as, think about the benefit that comes at the end for the patients or the participants or your service users. It's about reframing their thoughts around learning and development. It is around developing yourself. It's for your gain, but ultimately it's for the end game. So it's really hard to do that.
And that's really interesting, because usually for us, it's about them. It's about our learners. It's all about them. What's in it for them? But for your learners, you can put it as, well, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about your patients, service users. What's the effect for them? Because if you can learn this, they're going to get a better experience. And I think that's a really interesting carrot and a stick to use.
It's a good picture, isn't it, about the organisation and the quality of the service and the experience people are going to have.
Yeah. So I hadn't really thought about that, because usually it sort of ends with our learners. But for you, there's that extra step, isn't it? So that's interesting. Thank you. So look, there's lots and lots of reasons for learners disengaging. I mean, I always say to people, I spend my life going into rooms, even virtual rooms now, where people really don't want to be there because they've been made to be there. Whether it's, well, if you don't go on this course, you're not going to get a pay rise, or if you don't go on this course, you're not going to get this qualification, which means you can't do your job. So again, similar, they're being mandated and sort of marched in by their manager, arm behind the back. And they're sort of like, oh, and you can just see it, and it's like, right, okay, well, you're already dreading this. How can I make it better? It's tricky. It's quite a job, isn't it, to go into that environment and try and sort of turn them around. But turn them around, we must. Okay, so the first thing I want to think about today is and we've touched on it, is initial engagement strategies. So I think we mentioned earlier, it's as soon as you sort of say hello to them, we can start making a difference. So Nick, let's start with you. What's important about that initial meeting with that learner?
Okay. We're talking about sort of connecting and creating rapport with them. Yeah.
The very first time you meet them, what should we be thinking about?
I'm following your thread here, really, because that kind of putting people at ease. You've got to be sincere. We can all tell when someone's kind of got their tutor hat on. Oh, you must have this done by Friday. You've got to be genuine and sincere. We can't we? Like little kids can tell when someone's not being themselves. You've got to be yourself. And I think, look, how I connect with people, obviously find a little bit of common ground if we can, but use their name. Not overuse it. It is, who is it called it? The sweetest sound. I'll think of his name in a minute. But we like to be addressed by our Christian name, most of us. And then a little bit of making sure we are mirroring their body language, their voice tone, if they're quiet. We don't want to be loud. You want to be similar to put people at ease and mirroring words and
that's a really good point, isn't it? I think I do that automatically. I find myself sort of, if somebody's doing that, I do it. Is that a natural thing, or do we have to sometimes think, oh, I've got to do that?
No, look, you're right. It is a natural thing. We mirror body language. If you look at people stood in a cafe or something, well, we'll be stood in a mirror image to make people feel comfortable. But it's, as long as you have sincerity and you're genuine with it, you can sort of skillfully adjust to people and be mindful of someone who speaks very slowly. You don't want to come and say, right, come on, everybody, should we do this? It'll be like, oh, it's a bit uncomfortable. Just subtle things like that, which you can pick up and adapt to.
Brilliant. Make it too obvious, do you? Because otherwise you'll just think, are you copying me?
Yes. No, it can't be a kind of look at it and go, oh, there's something like that. I'll sit like this. It has to be subtle. But again, I think it's just sort of, ultimately, it's being sort of respectful and being aware and picking up on, they speak slowly or they speak quietly, or they don't like long, flowery words. They want to get straight to the point. I'll be the same.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Nikita, different for you or the same?
I struggle with mirroring because I almost get into this habit then of thinking I need to mirror this person. I'm going to look like I'm unhinged, basically. So it is very much a natural thing, and try not to get in your own head about mirroring. To build that rapport, it's about striking that balance. You need that formality of the relationship and those professional boundaries, but also be a human. Turn up and be a human. Don't default into that old school teacher role. That is really hard, I think, to overcome that when we see a lot of learners come into us who perhaps had poor school experience. So they're already come in with these preconceived ideas. So if you turn up and you will do this and you will do that. So be a human, try to get to know them, obviously within that professional relationship, learn a bit about them personally, what drives them, and who are you? Where do you live? If you're happy to share that, and find that bit of common ground. Yeah, and I think it's just about adapting in that moment to how that learner would like to develop that rapport as well. Because if you come in all singing, all dancing, this qualification is going to be great, this course is going to be great, and they really don't want to be there, that's quite tricky to navigate that. So you almost need to go in quite cautiously and then adapt to what the learner needs in that moment, I think, and develop rapport at their rate that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip, actually, because it's easy to go, well, first of all, you have, because there is a theory, I think Jeff Petty talks about it in one of his books, that you have formal rapport first, where you must set out the fact that you're in charge. And then, and only then you bring in the personal rapport. But I think it's a balance, isn't it? It depends on the person. It depends on so many things, so many factors.
Yeah, and I
What do you
think
think?
isn't it, to be in those assessors' expectations as well around
Yes.
how you are and what's expected, and encouraging the learner to take ownership in that process and being very transparent. What needs to be done, by when, and giving it to them. If it's really their qualification, they're doing it.
Yeah.
So get them to do some of the work as well. It's all up to you.
It's not. I think one of the things I always say is, well, what's realistic? What's realistic for you this week and over the next 2 weeks? Because I can set you all the targets you like, but unless you're buying into it, forget it. So what is realistic? And then you negotiate. And I think that's worked for me.
You're showing empathy there as well, aren't you? Which helps you connect.
I hope so.
Is that I can put myself in your shoes, realize you've got a lot on, and also you're getting them to commit to you rather than you tell them. It's much better if people say, oh, I think I can do it by. They're more committed, aren't they? Engaged.
No, exactly. I do think that works within reason, but I think because sometimes I've said it, well, what's realistic for you? And they're, well,
next
you
year.
give me a month to sort of open the file you sent me. It's like, no, that's not realistic. So let's rethink that. But I think most of the time it can work. Okay, the initial strategies right from the off. We've got to be then, as you say, human, genuine. And I'm a big believer in that. I think it's easy to be sort of maybe not, or at least come across as not genuine when you're sort of trying to get so much done with somebody on a course. We've got to show them that we are actually interested in them and supporting them. It's not just because we're being made to get the qualification, it's about them. But yeah, I like both those approaches, and I do like the mirroring, Nick. I just find that I do overdo it sometimes.
I don't think you do. I don't think you do.
I need a pen. Hang on.
This is the thoughtful pose, right?
But
Yeah.
bringing in the old psychology bit doesn't do any harm. But what about those learners that maybe were once engaged and something's happened, and we're maybe 6, 8, 12 months into a qualification, into the whole experience, we've built rapport, we thought, and then they disengage quite severely. What do we do then? Nick, what would you do?
Okay, well, we've all got different approaches to this, haven't we? I mean, I'm going to look sort of in a clinical fashion at this, really. I try and find out what's their why. Yeah, I try, I mean, obviously in an approachable manner, but I'm saying, right, kind of, why are you doing this? What are you hoping to get from it? To try and establish from them their purpose, their why. Generally speaking, it goes one of two ways. It's either they've done it for themselves, but they've just been busy, or they've just lost a bit of motivation for it, or they weren't giving clear enough directions and instructions, that roadmap, so they're not sure. It's an external thing where, I was made to do it, told to do it, signed up for it, didn't really want to do it. So then the why, instead of being motivated towards doing it and try and finding positives, it's kind of the management of, if it's a motivation away from, the management of fear. So, okay, so maybe you need to do this so that you get promoted at the next pay grade, or you do this so that you haven't got the heat from your line manager as to why you haven't done it. But I try and establish that. And then, which is, people generally, if you've got good body language and mirroring going on, people will, when you connected, they will open up and tell you. Some might take a little bit of digging and exploring, but you've got to probe, and it's coaching, isn't it, rather than telling. And then, if you can, and obviously there's other barriers, possibly of self-doubt again here, which I mentioned earlier. It's trying to overcome that. So I try and help people paint a picture then of, because we tend to sort of like to see ourselves how we want to be. So I do two things really. I say, how would you feel once you've done this and got it under your belt or knocked out of the park or whatever expression you want to use, how will you feel emotionally when it's done, when you've achieved it? And I let them kind of sit with that for a minute. Because up until now, they just thought, oh, crumbs, I've got to eat an elephant. I'm saying to you, when you ate the elephant, how will you feel? Rather full, I imagine. And then also, how will you see yourself? Which is a thing that athletes do, which I know I've mentioned before, like Usain Bolt. He visualizes himself winning the race 10 times, 100 times before he's done it. And I try and get people to kind of picture yourself. I know with ILM level 5, there's a few places I say, picture yourself at the graduation, getting your scroll and your glass of fizz, or have you try to give them a strong mental image of having achieved. Look, that's just some strategies that I go for.
And it's to, I mean, we'll talk about learning styles in another podcast, but, about the way people maybe prefer to communicate. Is that linked to that? So if you're, I'm a very visual person, visual learner, whatever you want to call it, so I guess you would say to me, well, visualize achieving rather than just feeling it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Kinesthetic is feeling it. And auditory is people going, well done, mate.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Multisensory, even better, I think, to be honest.
Definitely. That's what we say with everything, isn't it? A variety will help. Nikita, let's come to you next. I mean, do you have any learners that have maybe been properly end of the road, disengaged, and you just don't know what to do? What do you do with those learners?
It's hard, isn't it? Because when something has been mandated by your employer, you've got the threat then of potential capability issues and not fulfilling the whole of your role. So that is always looming over the conversation. I would rather not get to that point, and I would try my hardest not to get to that point. I think it's important to probably reframe the conversation. Then let's think of the other learning that is going on here. Let's think about the qualification and the learning needs to happen in the background. Yeah. But you're also learning other skills like time management. You're learning that critical analysis skills of what you're reading. Is it original? Is it authentic? And especially for people who would like to go on to further learning again, that's really important. Problem solving, how are we going to navigate past this sticky point for us? This is problem solving skills you're learning here. But I think if the time is right as well, to try and inspire a learner, perhaps share your journey of where you've been stuck and you've really struggled to get over a hurdle. And I shared that just recently with a learner. When I changed this job, I was halfway through doing my level 4 leading IQA. And I had a really open and honest conversation with Rachel. And I said, Rachel, from Panda, this is just not working for me right now. Put a pause on this and we'll pick it back up at another time. If you're able to do that, that's great. But I do like to lead with that question. If they're really checked out and they're struggling to see the wood from the trees, would you like a suggestion? Would you like my advice? Would you like my guidance? And then that gives them that bit of agency then in that moment to have some decision-making power. Because they've been told they have to do this qualification or this piece of learning. Let's give you that bit of power back in your hands to decide how we move forward. And quite often that changes the course of things, I find.
Well, that's really interesting because I'm a big believer. Has anybody heard of Daniel Pink and his take on motivation? Dan Pink came out with a really good book a few years ago called Drive. And it's all about the intrinsic drivers that we have to do stuff. And especially learning. And autonomy is one of those. So giving the learner that autonomy back, whereas well, what do you want to do next? What do you think you could sort of knock off the list, which bit? Maybe giving them a choice in how they do something, when they do something. It's like, well, should we take a break and then come back to it? What do you think? Because autonomy, and actually Dan Pink comes up with these 3 drivers. So autonomy, giving the learner more say in what they're doing and how they're doing it. Mastery, so getting really good at something that matters to them. So that's the trick, I think, is trying to find the aspect, like you said, well, look, there's transferable skills here. You're getting better at this and this, but it's feedback. So at the mastery stage, giving our learners regular and specific feedback. Not just, well done, keep going. It's like, well, what have they done well? Really drill into that. What have they done well and why? And give them that really constructive feedback, but on a regular basis, not just when you're told to for the paperwork, team. We've got autonomy, mastery, but purpose. And we've talked about that really, haven't we? Because if they can see the roadmap, if they can see that why they're doing this, and it's not just because their manager has said, well, you've got to do it. It's because they're going to gain some personal skills or some experience that they can use for themselves. If we can make them see that. And those 3 things, it's been proven, by Dan Pink. Just to be clear, he didn't do all the research himself. He just looked at all the research. Not that I'm bitter, but he looked at all the research of the past 50 years, and it all points to these three things. So that if there is autonomy, so we are not just saying, right, by next month, you need to do this and this. What's realistic for you? What do you think you can get done over the next week, the next 2 weeks? Break it down, but give them a say. Otherwise, going to push against you. Give them regular feedback to show them how they're getting towards their goal. I think the big picture is really important in motivation, and then getting them to drill down and see what's in it for them. We're like salesmen. I always say we're like the Del Boy, of post-16 education. We've got to sell to them what's in it for you, not for me. What's in it for you? What can we get you to get out of this experience?
And sometimes it might not be directly related to them. Maybe their work, it could be their outside jobs. It could be helping their children with their homework. It could be their daily life. Some, I always feel like with learning and education, nothing's wasted. There's always something you can get from any situation or any learning you do that is applicable to whatever kind of day you've got or different roles that you have.
Anne, do you have any more strategies? Any last tips or words of advice for engaging learners?
I think what everyone's saying is absolutely spot on about finding your why and that purpose. And yeah, like you said, kind of celebrating those small wins, really. Even if you can find some little bit, just that percentage progress, shift that up a little bit, just a bit of a, yes, we can do this. Just a quick win sometimes, just to change that mindset from like, oh gosh, I'm stuck behind with this. I'm really, really behind. Just to kind of shift it forward a little bit can really, really help. And like you're saying, break your work down to smaller chunks and keep in regular contact as well. So maybe you need to meet more regularly. Yeah.
Because we are sort of mandated to do a monthly review. Sometimes that's not good enough for a learner. So we have to sort of give them a WhatsApp, give them a call and say, how are you doing? And sort of check in a little bit more regularly. So look, let's finish with our guests, Nick and Nikita. What lasting sort of, if you had one piece of advice to give, we've covered quite a lot today, but if you had one lasting piece of advice to give tutors, trainers and assessors on how to engage or re-engage learners, what's the most important thing, do you think, Nick?
Okay. I mean, look, picking up on what you said about Dan Pink and mastery, autonomy and purpose, I think people like to be challenged. As long as we're careful how we do it, we like to be challenged. I mean, you've got to get to know them to gauge by how much.
Yeah.
Because there's then a sense of accomplishment next time they see you. Yeah, man, I've done that.
Yeah.
And also I was only allowed one of them. I'm going for a second one because I'm naughty. Instilling self-belief in people when they're kind of like, oh, I'm not good enough. Can I do this? What I've written isn't as good as I'd like. It's reminding them, well, what other qualifications have you done? How did you feel when you started that? And now you've got it.
Yeah.
Like reminder past successes, I guess.
Brilliant. That's a good one. Nikita,
Okay.
what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, for the setting that I work in and, healthcare, it's about that contextualization of the learning and whatever program or qualification you're offering, make that really highly relevant. So it's immediately applicable to them. They can see the impact in their daily role and how that's going to align. What the wider impact is going to be felt by, as I said, by service users, patients, whichever term they use. And as a side note, as a learner myself, a healthy supply of tea and biscuits, always a winner.
Good advice.
Evie. Always got my panda tea. Well, wise words from everybody there. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, really, thank you both for your contributions today, because we've all been there, got the T-shirt, didn't wear it today, but we have been there and had those conversations with learners to try and get them back in. It doesn't always work, but it's important to say that there will be that one learner that maybe it's not the right time for them, but it's important not to beat ourselves up over that. As long as you do your best and we try all of these strategies and not give up straight away, but believe in them and see if we can support them to get to that end goal. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Roz. Yeah, I just want to say that I think it's about, maybe trying different things, not being afraid to try different things sometimes if you can. Sometimes the awarded body sets assessments in a certain way, but if you've got some flexibility in that, then change your method, change how you do it, try a bit, experiment a little bit.
Completely. That's a very good piece of advice. It's about sort of learner needs, isn't it? And making sure, I mean, we do that all the time. We have to change and adapt for our learners' needs. So absolutely, that will get them re-engaged. Hopefully, good luck, everybody, with that ongoing challenge. So thanks, everybody, for your input today.
Thank you.
Look, if anybody does have any sort of scenarios or any advice on this and engaging learners or re-engaging learners, and get in touch on our socials You can even email us at hello@pandaeducation.co.uk. Shameless plug coming up, Nick, because if you do want to find out more strategies for engaging learners, we are going to have very shortly a short online course by Nick Barton, who's here with us today, on mastering learner relationships, and lots of practical tips in there as well. But yeah, get onto our socials to see that coming up over the next couple of months. In our next episode, we are joined by Dr. Esther Barrett, who's an ADHD coach. To discuss ADHD, Esther has recently found out that as an adult, she has ADHD, and she was so interested in that she became a coach. So she's retrained to do that. And we'll be looking at different symptoms, ways to identify and support our learners that may be neurodivergent. So really looking forward to that one. If you like today's podcast, please subscribe or like, or whatever those social things that you do, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.